and welcome back to Lap Down Podcast, where we bring you blue flags, and more blue flags. And because we drive V-Carbs, we jump out the way of Max Verstappen, because that's what you're meant to do. My name's Dan, I'm joined by Alex, and we had a banger of a Brazilian Grand Prix qualifying session. And then probably without the qualifying session, we would have had an absolute banger of a Grand Prix. But I think the qualifying was better than the race.
Hello, everyone. I think we're going to get into this because I mean, she was a sloppy one the whole weekend. That's a moist weekend, start to finish.
Damp.
I just think it was just good business. It was just good business all around. That's a good business weekend. Weirdly, the sprint I kind of forgot happened. I was doing some prep for this. I'm like, oh yeah, it was a sprint weekend. Well, oh yeah, like Lando was quick in that, and then not quick at any other point. But no, I mean, hey, there's a lot to talk about. Well, I've got a very full page of notes from a very wet Grand Prix. So look, let's talk Brazil. Let's just go top level first. Brazil, Dan, discuss. Full stop.
I mean, I consider myself banged from Brazil.
Yes.
I had a good old-fashioned Brazilian banging whilst I was watching the TV. It was honestly one of the best Sundays I think I've ever had, to be completely honest with you, to be glued in front of the TV. I know obviously Saturday was washed out, wasn't it, at the end, and it turned out to be a brilliant day. Maybe that's the way to actually kind of set up Formula One weekends every week now. Here we go. Saturday qualifying. Get it on the Sunday morning. Then get them back out there again. Yes, okay, fine. Alex Albon's car died and Williams couldn't kind of stick it back together again. And we lost a driver. I did find it quite funny, actually, for a little while that Lance Stroll was ranked below Alex Albon on the timing tower, even though Alex hadn't even started. But anyway, yes, I thought it was brilliant. I love Brazil. It's a great circuit. It's full of great history. I love it's a proper circuit with runoffs and gravel traps, and it's emotive, and you've got Lewis Hamilton rolling around in an old Ayrton Senna McLaren, which looked really cool. And as Sundays go, end of this season, we are going to do a tier list of the Formula One weekends. Brazil 2024 is going in the purple tier. I don't know what we can call it, but it's purple.
No, it's a purple sector, isn't it? It's a purple sector of a Grand Prix. Interesting theory about the Sunday quali and the idea of making that just Sundays be the day. Yep. Don't hate it. I dare say the teams hate it for the reasons you say, that if you push a little bit too hard and find the wall, it becomes a bit of a long afternoon. Very quickly, actually, on that, you talk about Williams there. I mean, they've rebuilt that car like 9 times this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think Williams have enough money and parts to finish the season if they have another incident with 2 cars? Because, wow.
It might make Christian Horner's conversations, James Vowles about Carlos Sainz for 2025, slightly easier, mightn't it? We could give you 3 front wings.
How about we give you side pod, you give us signs. It's just a classic signs side pod swap. I mean, look, nobody really knows, and I'm sure we're not actually that close to the line, but they were talking earlier in the season, before they got rid of the Eagle, about we can't keep crashing, we don't have enough parts, we don't have enough money to keep replacing parts. And I mean, with 3 races to go, they kept crashing this weekend, and they didn't just bump the wall. They did. Good job of it. Proper job of it. It wet itself, the car, at one point. It was pissing everywhere.
Yeah. Do you know that Lego McLaren you've got behind you?
There it is, yes.
If you were to take that to the top of your stairs...
Yes.
And just launch it off the side and land it on the ground floor. Yes. I think that would probably be the equivalent now that you would have a Lego Williams 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix version. And I would imagine somewhere in the garage, at the point, I couldn't tell you which one, but maybe at the point that Albon destroyed the car in qualifying, the Q3, wasn't it? I think he binned it and ripped the whole thing to pieces. You remember that little old Bristolian lady that on the news got quite famous because she went, "Oh, you're joking. Not another one. I just imagine she's there somewhere. Maybe not in person, because I think, unfortunately, she might have passed away. But in spirit, she was a Williams Formula One Grand Prix mechanic in Brazil.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the Franco one under the red flag, as amateur as that looks, I'm not convinced I think she's probably even given up by then.
What was weird, I mean, look, these kind of occasional crazy weekends are good fun. I don't want these every weekend. We can get into the whole luck v skill Lando Norris quote in a second. That's a whole nother thing. But these kind of conditions do mess with things a little bit, and in a fun way. Don't get me wrong, but it does bring more of a lottery element into it. I mean, we were seeing cars, all of a sudden be going backwards down a straight. Not really what's meant to happen. But they're a little bit like a big night out, aren't they? They feel really good at the time, and they feel like a great idea. And when you're in the middle of it, this is the best thing ever. And then you wake up the next morning, and it's like, I know I had a good time, but I don't want to do that again for a little bit.
Yeah,
please.
Why have I weeded my bin type thing?
Why? What is that? There's a kebab on a pizza in the bathroom.
How did that get there? I do have a question, though, about it. Do you think, with what we've experienced over the last weekend, have we really got the 20 best racing drivers in the world at the moment in this category of motorsport?
No.
Because, don't get me wrong, and obviously, I think Damon Hill was quoted. He was on there, and he kind of treads pretty lightly at the moment because I think every time he opens his mouth, particular portions of the internet just slate him.
Yeah.
But he was saying, and obviously I'm old enough to remember, he was saying, look, we would go out there and we would race in conditions that would be similar, if not worse. I dare say probably it's got marginally worse now because it feels like across the world when it rains now, it absolutely pisses it down.
Yeah.
But I remember watching some of the best drives I've ever seen in my life, from Michael Schumacher in particular, when you could quite literally not see the car in front of you. And he would drive around Spa like it was on rails, and it would be incredible. The cars have changed a lot. They obviously produce more downforce, so therefore I think there's more spray. But it was not exactly like, it's not exactly like if you went back and watched the Grand Prix from the late 90s that you would watch it and go, God blimey, that doesn't generate any spray. Like, there's still plumes of it pouring off the back of these cars. But yet we had the qualifying session that we had. We had both Aston Martins died in qualifying, both Williams died in qualifying. Lance didn't even make it to the grid. Williams couldn't rebuild the car. Franco put it in the wall under red flags. Hulkenberg beached it on a drain that had to be pushed away. Lando couldn't keep it on the islands. It felt like a constant kind of thing of, well, these guys aren't that good. Do you know what it felt like? It felt like if you went on to F1 24 and you didn't notice the fact that the lobby owner had turned traction control off, and you've got 19 other people there sitting on their gamepads, and they think, oh yeah, I'm really good at Formula One, and they lights go out and they just go, whoop. It felt like one of those.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question which I don't know, so I'm looking for help here from you as our historical F1
the historian.
expert.
Right.
How much quicker are the cars and the lap times now compared to the era that you're discussing there? Because I don't know. Are they 20% quicker than they used to be, and that 20% is going beyond the limit now of how quick a human can catch, a Lando Norris can catch the fact that they are 0.5% too much, lock, so they're going to go off or whatever? And is there an element of, the cars are so much quicker now, the quicker things go, the harder things are to save? And I mean, it's some of those moments where they did go into the wall. It's weird because the car looks fine, and it looks fine, and it looks fine. Oh, it's in the wall. And it just seems it just suddenly goes like someone's, kicked the thing on the back, and it just goes whoop, 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 and it's in the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it probably won't surprise you that I'm not going to be able to give you an exact number. I'm going to have to kind of fill this out on vibes, to be completely honest with you. But I think there's an element of the ones where it looked like they were going, oh yeah, we're fine. Like Albon's, for example, in qualifying. As far as my understanding is, when it's wet, do not put your tyres on anything that's painted. And that's what he's done. That's not the car's fault. It's not the condition. Well, it's marginally the condition's fault, but it is ultimately driver error. He's put the car somewhere it shouldn't have been, and the car's gone, no, I don't work like this. I would imagine in a straight line, we're talking kind of singular percentage difference, I would have thought, like flat out in a straight line. But I don't necessarily think that's the issue. Yeah. I think the thing is, obviously, the downforce has changed hugely. The cars back in the day, you've only got to look at a photo. They clearly don't have as much stuff.
They are
on
cars
them.
back in the day, not planes on wheels.
Precisely. And it just feels like the second that it gets a little bit kind of unpredictable, the drivers don't have the ability to then, well, with the exception of one, they don't have the ability then to be able to kind of still throw that through a corner, because it feels like you're going to go into turn one, you're going to go down these center S's, and you're just going to, in the dry, you're just going to go done, gone. Whereas now in the wet, it's like, well, I'm still going to do that, but actually the results aren't the same. And I'm
Is there a little bit of, gentlemen, a short view back to the past of all of it, that obviously, like the Schumacher era, he wouldn't have driven 3,500 laps on the sim in the week leading up to a Grand Prix in perfect conditions in a simulator that is replicating things being ideal, dry. Okay, I'm sure they can do wet weather sims and whatever, but it's not going to be the same. You can't, water is unpredictable and aquaplaning and all this, that, and the other. And is there an element possibly, and again, I'm asking genuine questions here to the ether, that the drivers have almost become so honed and robotic about what they're doing? And it does blow my mind, by the way, when you see like Max Verstappen's clear air lap times, and he's just done 15 laps within 0.1 of a second. He's just driven 4.1 miles or whatever it is, 0.1 of a second different 15 times. Like, that's out. When you actually stop and just think about what that actually translates to, I don't think I could drive my car at 70 miles an hour, within 5 seconds time. If I'm going to go to Aldi 5 times and get there in exactly the same time. So I wonder if there's a little bit of that they are it's so muscle memory now. They've got their line, they've got their groove, they've driven that X amount of times, that when we go outside that, they're not maybe driving as much on natural skill and instinct as the old school drivers were, because they get in the car and off they go. They've got the go button and they've got gears, and now they've got, mapping and modes and all the rest of it, that perhaps they're just so primed for prime conditions that, if you take them slightly outside that, they don't lose it. They're still driving ridiculously fast, and they're still incredibly talented. But I wonder whether there's that muscle memory element of it, that they are now so autopilot almost that they just. It was like going back to Singapore last year now, actually, wasn't it? Like with George Russell when he clipped the wall on the last lap or the second last lap, and he is an inch further to the right than he'd been before, but he's just driven straight into a wall. Because he sort of must be in that autopilot of, I know you're not looking directly in front of the car, you're looking through the corner and all the rest of it. But, I wonder if there's a little bit of that, perhaps. What I will say, Max Verstappen, ignore everything I've just said. Because, fuck me, Max Verstappen. I don't think we've had well, to be fair, he's not necessarily deserved it recently. He's not been pissing away like he used to. We've not had a proper applause for Max section of this pod for a little while, so let's just give him a minute or two here, because, wowee, Max Verstappen, that was like watching someone play F1 24 with like the AI on 35. Like, off the start, he makes up about 21 places, and then he goes round the outside of another 20 cars, or on the outside of the Curva del Sol, which is an incredible name for a corner. And it's like, is anyone else even trying? Unbelievable.
Kind of feels like Curva del Sol was the nightclub that we had our night out in. And,
there it is.
And then kind of regretting the choices for it afterwards. I think Max's drive, proves to the fact that if you are genuinely one of the very, very best in the world, you can drive quickly in those conditions. And it was a fantastic drive. One of the best that I think I've ever seen from him. Some of them, it's certainly not as dominant. Well, maybe no, it probably was as dominant.
He finished like 21 seconds ahead.
Relatively speaking, it probably was. Maybe I was just considering the fact that it didn't feel like the entire weekend that Max was kind of checked out from before they'd even bolted the tyres on.
Which almost makes it, I think, better.
That's what I mean.
He's come from nowhere.
It has to be up there with one of his best from when, like, one of the early days to when he maybe even won his first Grand Prix in the Toro Rosso way back. Because it has been relatively easy and straightforward for him up to that point. But I don't necessarily think Max is there because his father is a multi-billionaire. He's got there because of talent, if that makes sense. And Red Bull have had an option there to be able to go, yep, we would like to promote you through this. We know that we're not going to be able to fund our entire Formula One team on your dad, but we think you're really good, and we'd like to keep going with you. And I think that drive in particular just proved just how good he is. So good.
It was a weird thing that like everyone kind of got themselves really hyped up. I think of he's starting 17th. Lando Norris is on pole. Like this is the big swing weekend. This is, even if Lando can take 10 or 12 points off him, that then brings us back into different realms of Max only has to finish P7 and Lando wins for us to go to Abu Dhabi and whatever. And Max went, no, I'm going to be in the points by lap 4, and then I'll just work my way up to the front from there. And okay, I come from a background from sports media. We've talked about this so many times. Lando Norris needs to have a little second sit down with the media training person, because Lando Norris at the minute is too good at providing out of contextual quotes. Because it's not skill, it's just luck quote that has riled up a very orange part of the internet and a very anti-McLaren and anti-Norris, which seems to be a large portion of the internet. That sentence is a really bad pull quote, but he's offered them that opportunity to make it a pull quote. If you look at the rest of what he says before and after that, it's nowhere near as bad, and it makes a lot more sense, but they're not going to do that. Motorsport.com is not going to put the whole paragraph on the graphic. They're going to put the one line on the graphic. And yeah, there was some luck in it. I think even without the red flag I think Max Verstappen could have pitted and still won this Grand Prix by some distance. I mean, 17 fastest laps, you don't need a red flag tyre change to go and win that Grand Prix from there. And you just saw him. You saw Perez. Perez is another great example here, and we're not going to turn this into a shit on Perez session. We've had too many of those, but Perez is in the same car. He's in the same car as a bloke that's just set 17 consecutive fastest laps and won by 21 seconds. It looked like he was driving in the dry.
Yeah.
If we need to put to bed the debate of car versus driver, it is a mix of both, but the driver has quite a bit to do with it because you've got two blokes in the same one. And I think Perez finished P11. Did he squeak into the points in the end?
Do you know what? I don't know, because I still wasn't sure whether Mercedes got disqualified or whether other people got time penalties or anything like that. So I'm not, or whether they're going to do anything with all of those drivers that drove through yellow lights while the second formation lap after Lance died. So I have no idea. Okay, with regards to Lando's quote, yes, there was fortune involved.
Absolutely.
For those that think that the sun shines out of Lando's bumhole, let's only throw back to Miami when he won that Grand Prix, when he inherited it under the red flag and he changed the tyres. Let's throw it back to qualifying when that red flag came out and Max ended up being dumped out in Q2. And obviously then Max has been fortunate because they did stay out, and then he almost inherited a couple of positions when the red flag came out in the race and changed the tyres and all that other good stuff. It comes around, it goes around. Yeah. Was it the smartest thing to say? Probably not, but I don't really think it matters now, because I think the World Drivers' Championship is over.
Yeah, it is. And it will be, we'll have Max Verstappen as champion of the world for the 4th time in Las Vegas, next weekend. I saw someone had made a whole spreadsheet about it, but basically if Lando wins, Max needs to finish 2nd to secure the World Drivers' Championship.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He'll probably do that.
If not next weekend, possibly the weekend after that, or if not that weekend, possibly the one after that as well. He's got 3 hits at this just to get this wrapped up, and we don't see the unreliability that we used to see back in the day. Clearly, Max is one of the very, very best, as we've just spoken about. He's not just going to throw it in the wall 3 times, is he? And
none of these next 3 tracks are particularly gotcha tracks.
Not really.
We're not going to Monaco 3 times where, the smallest mistake and you're out. Qatar's got more runoff than track in most of it. If you go wide in Qatar,
to get monsoon conditions in any one of those 3 deserts.
Don't look to rain on any
Cloud
of the next
seeding,
3.
Though. I did see those photos in Dubai not that long ago, so you never know.
Yeah, it's happening.
You never know. But no, Max is good. Good for Max. Well done.
Yes. Good for Max, well done. I think I'll say good for Max, well done. Good for Alpine, well done. Fair play. It was a weirdly quiet, understated, like, banger for Alpine that they sort of, and I know people did make a little bit of fuss about it when it was happening, but it almost didn't seem real that we've got a 2 Alpine podium. They hadn't come through the field from 17th to 1st. They didn't really, I know they did sort of use the red flag, but they didn't really need to use the red flag. They didn't jump from 9th to 2nd and 3rd in that red flag. It was a very quiet, ridiculous feat from Alpine that's, at this point, given them $50 million. It's not a bad weekend in Brazil.
I mean, to be fair to them, we've not really seen the car go round any form of Grand Prix whilst it has been raining. Because normally they don't... Well, one, normally it doesn't really rain. And two, if it does rain, they normally go, no. Let's give it half an hour. Let's get the big super soppers out there and let's let it dry up. And then we'll drive behind the safety car. And by the time it's dried out, Alpine are still 17th and 18th and the cars are still going around. So we haven't really seen that car in those conditions. And clearly they've developed something that is pretty awful in the dry and clearly something that's very, very drivable and controllable. Maybe not hugely surprising. If it's a bit slow in the dry, then it becomes a little bit more predictable in the wet, maybe.
I'll tell you what's not surprising is that the team who's sponsored by Best Water Technologies made a car that's quite good in the fucking wet. I mean, it's been on the front of their overalls the whole time, and we've only now realised why.
Surely there's a water company in amongst that V-carb name somewhere. Surely.
Gotta be, surely. They're changing their name again as well, aren't they? We're losing the V-carb.
Well, I would imagine the sponsors are changing, aren't they? So they'll be called like Tommy Lidl, McVitie's, Walker's, Dell.
I think they're just going to Racing Bulls. After all of that. Because I think the Visa was only... Cash App were only there because of Visa, and Visa was only there because of Danny Rick. So it's not a surprise to anyone that they fucked off.
But don't they need to hide that kind of conflict of interest that they may have with their
One's a colour and one's an action, mate. They're not the same.
What if... But just hear me out. What if they went for Red Bulls?
Oh, plural.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or wait, hang on, hear me out. Red Bull second team.
Ooh. Or what if they just took the words Red Bull and put them in another language, like Toro and Rosso?
Now that feels like that's been done before.
They don't mind, yeah.
Could we do it in Spanish or something?
I don't think you'd get away with it.
German.
Like Red Bull.
Yeah, that would work. I think that might be
second French team.
Yeah,
we'll get a second French team.
That would work.
Red Bull.
No one would figure that out. No one would figure that out. But it is a bit dodgy. It's a bit sus. And I mean, watching Liam Lawson like defend like his life depends on it against Sergio Perez, and then jumps out the way when Max gets behind him is yeah. No. Honestly, we don't have any input on this second team. Get out the way, Liam. Sorry, boss.
Did I just see? Did Liam just wave him through like he was in traffic? Did he just wave him out onto the motorway?
You remember last week that Liam went like this?
Meow.
I think this time he went
meow.
Very similar. And at high speed, I think you can cover them up. But
he's flashing the rain lights on him
mental.
And just going, come round.
Absolutely mental. Can we talk about Lance Stroll?
Yeah, we could talk about Lance Stroll.
Surely it's about time that Lawrence just gave up on his son. Like,
yeah.
Like, the lad's in his mid-20s now. Like, the dream's over. Stop buying him drum kits for Christmas, Lawrence. Like, he's not going to become a drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, no matter how much he might like to tell you that he is going to be. Just leave it. Just let him go. Like, there's no... It's a lost cause now, Lawrence. Like, this... To say that this is the worst moment of Lance Stroll's career is quite an incredible statement, bearing in mind of some of the things that we have seen over the 5-6 year career that he's had in Formula One. But to spin like he did in the first place...
Which I will just very quickly say, could have been mechanical. At that point, there is the smallest benefit of the doubt available.
I mean...
It's a heavier braking zone. Something might have gone wrong. Continue.
Didn't he ask the question and the engineer said, no, the brakes are okay? And then I would. What? What on earth went through like his mind to just kind of go, we'll just drive through this. It'll be fine. Like, at what point? I'd love to know at what point at Lance's brain went, no, I might have made a mistake here. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's wet. Surely one of the best 20 drivers in the world has looked at like a big boggy kind of sand trap or gravel trap and gone, no, I probably shouldn't drive through that. And he hasn't even tried to avoid it. That's what I can't. Like, he had so much time. He could have done a 3-point turn. He could have reversed back a little bit. He could have.
It's not even racing conditions either. It's not even like he's got to be quick about this. Like, he can take as long as he wants, realistically.
Yeah. It was. Honestly, it still gave me hope at 35 years old that I could be sat in that Aston Martin driver's seat 2 next year.
What I loved was the replays we saw. We didn't really get given on the pictures the whole story of how he ended up in the gravel and out. Because we went, Lance Stroll's out. Well, it's like Lance Stroll's spun and gone to the runoff area here. We've got double waved yellows in sector 2 or whatever. And they cut to him and he was on the hard bit at that point, and that was okay. At that point, he's had a moment. People have had moments before in the prep lap. Tires are cold or whatever. You're getting used to it. That can happen, right? And then we cut back to the grid and we had the whole debacle with half the field leaving and whatever. And then they went, oh no, Lance Stroll's out properly. And we cut back to him and he's in the gravel. And we never saw on the broadcast how he went from the good, safe, hard bit to the gravelly bit. No. And then it came out sort of afterwards in a social clip, this video of him spinning, right, get himself composed again, couple of buttons on the wheel. Oh, there's some gravel over there. Oh, that's the quickest way back into the track. I'm just going to... I'm stuck.
Yeah.
It was like something from Top Gear. It was like a scripted, we're going to pretend this isn't scripted moment from Top Gear, where Jeremy Clarkson goes, well, this is the solution. Power, I'm stuck. What a bloke.
Like a confused old lady that's just driven in the front of a Waitrose because she's got her brake and accelerator mixed up in her automatic Honda Jazz type thing. Look, there are a few out there that actually quite like Lance Stroll, and I think we've kind of been on the back end of a couple of those comments on the social media ones. But I can't see how anybody can defend that from him, and I don't. No. I don't even see how there's a path back. How is there a path back for Lance Stroll?
Well, there isn't.
Well, clearly one, not across the gravel. Well, that doesn't work. We've tried that one. But they're just about to bring in Adrian Newey. They've got a 2-time world champion in there for however long Fernando wants to stay there for. If Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll have got any aspirations of moving that team up the grid, Lance is not part of that.
No. What I will say as well, and we didn't need more proof about the driver and the competitor and the athlete that Fernando Alonso is. But he called the medical car for himself towards the end of that Grand Prix. And there was that very heartwarming radio message where he said, I'm going to finish this for the engineers because you did an incredible job. Yeah. And I'm going to finish the race, but I'm dying. And he genuinely said, prepare the medical car. I'm going to pull into the pit lane. Where do I need to go at the finish? Yeah. And there's that video of him where he could basically not get out of the car and he gets up and his engineer comes over and gives him a hug or whatever. And it's quite a harrowing, 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso is putting himself through. He was running in like P16 or something, wasn't he? He was behind by 20 seconds at one stage and pulled that back against Show and whatever. I think most other drivers in that level of discomfort with that much bouncing or whatever, their team would have said, mate, pull it in. Like, this isn't worth it for anyone. And he's saying, no, just get the medical car ready. I'll be there in a bit.
Yeah.
Lance Stroll's not doing that. And you look at the two differences. We've got one bloke in that team who deliberately drove directly into a gravel trap like a lemming. And then we've got a bloke that is having to call the medical car on himself, but is not going to give up because he's going to finish it for his engineers because that's the kind of...
Is there a bigger skill gap between drivers on the grid in any other team than the Aston Martin team?
The Red Bull?
No.
Whoa.
Nah.
No, you are right. You are right. It's not far off, but you are right. And possibly the Williams when we had Sargent and Albon, I think, different stages possibly of the skill tree, but they were podium for that, I would say.
Mental.
Right. To finish off, and I say to finish off, it's a relatively broad topic, and it might be one we need to come back to for a little bit of closure on next week. Let's talk stewarding, everybody's favourite topic, because there's been quite a lot of stewarding chat recently, and it's that age-old thing in sport in general, that officials are doing their best work when you don't notice or have to talk about the officials, and that's when they must be, that's when they're performing at their peak, is when they almost become invisible. I don't think there's been more visible stewards in the history of sport as there has been for the last couple of weeks.
I don't know. I'd throw you back to Abu Dhabi 2021. That was fairly visible. Well, to be fair, that wasn't a steward, was it? That was a race director.
No, that's a race director, not a steward. And a lot of people confuse those as well. A lot of people don't realise that the race director isn't a steward and the stewards aren't the race director and whatever.
Put some respect on those stewards' names.
So there's sort of, and in that way, there are two topics of discussion here, which is maybe why it boils over into next week a little bit. There's sort of the race director element with choice to go to red flags and safety cars and the timing of that. And then there's the stewarding side of things with some of the penalties that are and aren't given out. You alluded to it earlier. The Mercedes made a very clear technical breach. And technical breaches are usually, if that flashes up on the screen, you're done. It's like if you're under investigation for a start infringement, you're done. Because the sensor has gone, well, they jumped the start, so you jumped the start. And, that procedural stuff tends to be pretty open and shut. They got away with it because of, I essentially think the stewards went, it was all a bit of a shambles at the start, wasn't it? Don't do it again. Not really how that should probably go. Particularly not in the midst of this whole water in the tires gate. I'm not implying in any way that it's Mercedes that are accused of that or that's what they were doing, but we're scrutinizing what's going into the tires, and you just had a team just pump some stuff into the tires on the grid, and we're just like, you scallywags, don't do that again. But let's just isolate it down, shall we? Maybe we talk about stewarding next week. Red flags, Dan.
It felt like we spoke about it last week anyway, didn't we?
Possibly.
It feels like I've had this conversation before anyway.
Well, look, there's all sorts of permutations and whatever since, I suppose. But red flags and the race director.
Yeah.
How do you feel about free tyre change under red flags?
I don't know. I don't know if I care enough, to be honest. I guess it is fair for everybody. Everybody does have the ability to be able to do that. It's not like you've made a pit stop, so therefore you can't change your tyres under a red flag. You can if you want to,
and they all do. Obviously, they take the opportunity provided they've got some tyres.
It just has been a case this last week. The fact that someone that you and I both like didn't get the strategy right on that. And if McLaren had stayed out, then actually Lando would have had the ability to have changed those tyres and kept track position. But I think the point that you made earlier in the episode, I don't think it would have mattered, because I think Max would have just twinkle-toed round the outside through some
Lando wasn't closing.
No, it was done. It was done. Yeah. Max was on a different planet, and I'm not convinced.
And we're not in a slick situation either, where there is a genuine delta between an old and a new. Like an old Inter in those conditions and a new Inter was not, a second and a half a lap difference.
The only thing that it might have changed is it might have been Max Lando / George rather than Max Esteban /
the Alpines.
Pierre. Yeah. Like that's literally it. I still think Max would have just driven around them. Yeah. I don't mind it as a rule. I really don't.
I see it, and it comes back to Lando's quote a little bit, the whole luck v skill thing. Like, strategy and luck are interchangeable to a degree. Like you can build a lot of your strategy around percentages, and percentages are a mathematical way of saying luck, realistically. Yep. If you're going, right, in Singapore, there is a safety car, 100% probability, because the last 8 times we've been here, there's a safety car, and you build a strategy around a safety car, and we don't get a safety car, you could argue that that was unlucky. And in the same way, if we haven't had a safety car in 9 races like we didn't this year, and you happen to benefit from that, but your strategy was or wasn't to hang out for a safety car, then that could be lucky or unlucky. And I think a red flag and a safety car are 2 race director interventions that you can benefit from or get screwed by.
I mean, flip it the other way around. Say you aren't allowed to change your tyres, and you then have 22 lap old mediums on your car that you then have to start again from a grid box or from a safety car restart, that you then have to box on the next lap afterwards because you can't go more than 23 laps on a medium because they'll explode. That becomes is equally unfair, doesn't it? Because your inherited P2, although it's not a real life P2 because of pit stops and stuff, turns out to be, well, actually, no, now you've lost P4 because now you're 30 seconds behind last place. Yeah. So I don't necessarily think there's a right or a nice way of doing it.
The rule which people forget, or the reason why you're allowed to change tyres under a red flag, is because in theory, if we've got a red flag 9 times out of 10, that's probably because there's been an incident of some description. It's probably more crashy than weathery. And the idea is that if there was carbon fibre littered everywhere, it's probably a good idea we change those tyres just in case everybody rolled over some carbon fibre and you've all got punctures, and we don't want to be doing that. Yeah. There is that other argument that absolutely you are welcome to work on the car and change your tyres, but that does not count as your mandated pit stop. Starting to get complicated at that point, because what if you change compounds and not compounds and whatever. But I think we're relatively agreed on it that just crack on, lads, and it doesn't happen that often, and when it does happen, someone's going to win out and someone's going to lose out, and depending on what colour hat you've got on, probably depends whether you like the rule or not.
Yeah, and if Lando and McLaren had been better throughout the course of the entire season, we wouldn't have been talking about this as a championship
I saw a wonderful post, which is the best summary of social media for sport. Someone put on the F1 subreddit, if Ferrari clinched the constructors by 5 points, then Oliver Bearman has won this for them with his drive in Singapore. And everyone went, no, because every point in F1 is worth the same. And it's like in cricket, we always go back to with us, like, the 4 runs that you scored off the first ball of the game and the 4 runs that I scored off the last ball of the game to win it are both worth 4 runs, and they both had the same impact on the game. But that was incredible. Right, there's been a lot of chat there. We've got a week off now. Before we go to Vegas for a triple header.
Woo!
Do we go bang, bang, bang the last 3? Is it genuinely a triple, or is it a...
It's got to be getting close, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're in the 6th of November now.
We don't have a December race, do we? I don't think.
Or
do we have a December race?
Dhabi 2024, 8th of December is Abu Dhabi.
Okay, so we go 17 in Vegas.
Yeah, we are a triple header. We're 24 in Vegas. 24, 1, 8.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so we got 2 weeks off then?
Yeah, because why wouldn't you? It's not like we just had a break, and it's not like we had a break before that.
Yeah, and I mean, Vegas is on the right side of the globe for Brazil as well, so it would make... Oh, well. Anyway, cool. Well, I reckon probably next week we need to go through who's going to be driving where next week, because we've got another person confirmed and we may have the other driver's spot. And if not, we can kind of talk about whether Liam Lawson's going to get it or not.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Please keep engaging with us on socials and whatnot. It's been lovely to see all of you jumping over on there. If we can get ourselves to 1,000 TikTok followers, it means we can put a link in our bio, and it means that someone that stumbles upon us on TikTok might actually be able to come and listen to this entire thing.
Woo!
Also, if you're listening to us, you can actually come and see us as well. On Spotify, you can watch the video pod, and on YouTube, you can watch the whole thing with the video there as well, so you can see me and Dan pull faces at each other while we make contrary points. Dan, if they'd like to go and see you jolly yourself around the West Indies and rally around them and Sri Lanka and all the rest of it, where can they find you?
You can find me at danjads_ on the interwebs, but I will say my life now is boring, so I have nothing exciting planned at all.
It's cricket now, which
pretty much. Yeah, but there's some things that you can catch up on, and that was quite good. So,
well, there is that. There is that. You can come watch me play games on Twitch. Hey, look, it's Alex, and it's Alex typed that on other things. I don't really do a huge amount. I probably should do more typing and other things like that. But we'll be back next weekend. Or next week. With a couple of weeks off to chat about different things. If you've got a topic you'd like us to talk about while we don't have racing to talk about, lapdownpod@gmail.com. You can send us an email on there. Maybe tell us who your favourite driver is, or who your favourite track is, or why we should or shouldn't have red flags at all. But until then, we will see you all next week.